right? There's two sheets.
There are, yeah.
Okay, officially a couple minutes after 7 o'clock. So if you could grab your seats, get settled in. We are going to be getting started here.
Are these questions from people? Or? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. We're grateful to have you here with us tonight as we come together to address the critical issues surrounding the proposed South Dakota State Penitentiary at 278th Street and 477th Avenue here in Lincoln County, South Dakota. Your time and presence are appreciated as we continue our push for transparency and accountability from our government. I'm Kaya Broders, President of NOPE, and I'm joined by Maddie Vogelai, Vice President. We will be co-moderating this forum tonight.
Good evening. As we move forward with this forum, we kindly ask that you limit side discussions, find a seat, silence your phones, and wait for a microphone to reach you before asking questions. We will have time for questions, and Jeff will come around and bring a microphone to you. To ensure that our time is used efficiently, we'll be presenting key topics and concerns, hearing from guest speakers pertinent to the key topics at hand, and allowing about 5 minutes for discussion and questioning at the end of delivery to address any additional questions that are relevant to the current topic.
No, Lincoln County is more than just an organization opposing prison expansion. We stand for a future where community voices are respected and decisions like the one about the penitentiary are made with transparency and community welfare at the forefront. Our mission is rooted in advocacy, education, and collaboration as we strive to protect the way of life we hold dear while addressing the challenges facing us.
Tonight's forum is intended to bring light to various issues tied to the land announced last October 6, 2023 as the site for the new South Dakota State Penitentiary. Since that announcement, we have worked tirelessly to engage with the state and the Department of Corrections to address the concerns of our county.
For those of you who may not know, after numerous attempts to engage with state officials, including invitations to Governor Noem and Secretary Wasco to meet with concerned constituents, we were met with multiple delays. Even after litigation was filed, we were prepared to meet with Secretary Wasco and her team, only to be told they would not be meeting with us. While we respect their decision, we remain committed to seek answers and transparency.
It is crucial to mention since that time, the Lincoln County Commission has filed an amicus brief in support of our lawsuit. They too believe that the state must adhere to the zoning laws laid out in the Lincoln County Comprehensive Plan. This reinforces the importance of our collective voices as we challenge the state's actions.
Additionally, we encourage you to reach out to your local elected officials, district representatives, state senators, Secretary Wasco, and Governor Noem. We are pleased to welcome and thank the elected officials who are here with us this evening. We understand they may not have all the answers tonight, but we appreciate their transparency and urge them to continue partnering with us to seek clarity and elevate our concerns at the state level.
Is this better? Can we hear better this way?
Yes? Okay, that's delightful. We want to host a forum where you are able to hear the moderators and the speakers, so that's great. Thank you once again for joining us. As we begin, it's important to reflect on how the state came to own this land. To help provide context, we'd like to welcome November Tom Eastland to walk us through the history of the land and how we arrived at this point.
Hi, I'm Tom Eastland. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate this opportunity to spread the information on what we've found out so far and what has happened so far. They asked me to give a little history of the site, the farm. I'm going to try to make it as brief as possible. I've farmed it for 42 years, 32 years for the state. It actually was a legal relinquishment from someone who died without a will and had no heirs. But technically, it was a gift because both the owner and their personal representative knew that if they didn't do something with it, it would be relinquished to the state. And they knew that the goal that would go to school and public land. This couple had no children. They were very active in the state and loved South Dakota. And thought that's not a bad deal.
Says it's
It
waiting.
would go to the people of South Dakota. The money will be used for the schools. They thought that was okay. And it was for 32 years. School and public lands, and I had a wonderful association. They honored the fact that it was a gift. They saw to it that the taxes got paid because the state doesn't pay taxes normally. But these were, by me, as part of the rent. They told me to do all my business locally, and do all the grain sales locally, and be a good community of the county, and they were. Alfred died in 74, but before that, he made Earl his personal representative. Matilda lived on that farm was left to her at his settlement. She lived until 92, I believe it was. So somewhere along there, it was relinquished to the state. And I couldn't farm it. I was farming at the time, and I couldn't farm it until this year. That's the part that's sad, me losing that land and farm. If our family is still through, to care for that way. But if our time there is gone, that's fine. But what's happening to it is the problem. These people were agriculturists and strong members of the Beaver Creek community, and now they want to take it out of agriculture and residential and essentially destroy the Beaver Creek community. And, if you have any questions beyond what I've said, feel free to talk to me or ask during your question and answers, or feel free to I'll certainly answer. Thank you.
All right, so we want to move through a few welcoming pieces here. We wanted to introduce you to the Lincoln County Board of Directors and officers, the state elected and appointed officials that we invited this evening. Governor Nolan and Kelly Wasco were both invited to be here this evening to hear your concerns and your questions regarding the proposed location for the state penitentiary, but they are not in attendance at this moment. Maybe they're just running late. We have some local elected officials that we invited as well. We invited the Mayor of Canton, Worthing, Lennox, and Harrisburg. Some are in attendance, some are unable to make it due to prior commitments, and some are joining us online. We have quite a few with us here online as well, so thank you for joining us in person and online. Lennox City Council was invited to hear your concerns as a community. Again, some are here, some have previous commitments. Thank you to those in attendance. We've invited Jim Giddens and Joel Aaron, two of our Lincoln County Commissioners, to be here tonight as they also agree with us in passing their amicus brief that they had voted on previously. We have two District 16 representatives here with us tonight. We have Carla Lund and Kevin Jensen. They will be also serving as guest speakers this evening. I did want to share the press release that was released to Kelly Wasco and Christine Ohm, inviting them to this forum. They were indeed invited and are more than welcome to be here. Kyle, would you like to speak on where we are at a legal standpoint at this point in time?
From a legal standpoint, the court did hold a hearing, just to bring people full circle. When you continuously hear about the lawsuit is focused on the state, overstepping the county's planning and zoning. So having no regard for the overall layout, where any other normal citizen would have to have a permit or would have to go through our county commission to be able to have a business in an ag zone. So the land that Tom just spoke to us about, the land that they are planning to build this prison on, or asking permission of our legislators to build this prison on, is zoned as an ag area. So at this time, that is what that lawsuit is about. So that is really the entire premise of that. And the state did ask for a motion to dismiss. Our complaint was heard on Monday, January 22nd. It was held in the Lincoln County Courthouse and heard by Judge Jennifer Mamega, and we continue to await the judge's decision. While waiting is not easy, it is of course a part of this process, and we thank all of you as we continue to wait along with us.
So I wanted to, if we're not going to have too much feedback, see how I do here, point out a little bit about the location of where this proposed state penitentiary is going to be. So they are wanting to move it out of Minnehaha County. What we are looking at is the land that Tom was talking to us about, prime agricultural farmland in the heart of Lincoln County. We are looking at this section right here. So Jeff has graciously made a map to show you the distance to the closest communities around. So we are 5.3 miles from Canton, 3.9 from Harrisburg, 4.8 from Worthing, and 11 miles from Lennox. So it's red tonight to indicate that this is where we're speaking about, this is the forum that we're having, and what we want to make you aware of. What I found was really alarming when looking at it though, is just how close this is to the Lennox School District. So when we think about this, we're not building a county jail. It's not something small. This is very significant. This is a $1 billion project. This is the state penitentiary, right? It would be moved out of Minnehaha County into Lincoln County. So what was the most alarming to me was when we look at the map of the school district, as the crow flies, you are going to have students in the Lennox School District living within 2 miles of the new state penitentiary. So I wanted to bring that up as we begin because I think it's a very important point. Although we have many concerns, we want to make sure that all of our voices are being heard and that we are communicating effectively. So our goal tonight is to ask constructive questions and to seek solutions. Please remember that our elected and appointed officials that are here tonight don't have all of the answers. This is what we're trying to seek from the state. However, we want to make sure that we're voicing our concerns and that they're being raised and we're asking questions of our elected officials. So I want to walk through a few key pieces of those tonight. The first is the impact on a rural county. So we need to look at what impact this facility would have on Lincoln County. Currently, we know that it sits in Minnehaha County. Lincoln County would now be taxed with the dollar. We would have to worry about safety. With this, there's now a static load. What we mean by this is the cumulative effects of the chronic stress we're having on a mental and physical health of those that live in the county. Okay. Is this a battery or is it? Okay, we're good. So we wanted to take a look at that. As you think about some of the things that have been going on within the Department of Corrections, within the state penitentiary, that would hit us a lot harder. It would be a lot closer to home. We want to look at the presence of drugs and paraphernalia within the community and the communities surrounding the state penitentiary. The impact on local and county strategic planning, as Kaya had mentioned, over 50 years ago, Union County Commissioners came up with a comprehensive plan of how they wanted the county laid out. This is simply stumping on that and not taking any of that into consideration. The rural communities like Lennox, as we know it, would disappear. How would we be able to maintain our county as an agriculture and rural residentially zoned area? Next, we really want to look at our quality of life. Is this really what we want as a county? To talk about the impact that this would have on a rural county, we've invited District 16 Representative Kevin Jensen to speak with us a little bit on this matter.
Thank you. There is so much here, folks. This isn't just about the location. This is about the entire concept and policy, procedure, and management of DLC. It's bringing all this stuff to a head. I could talk for 3 hours on this myself, and sometimes I do, so I'll try not to. But I serve, just for background, when I was younger, I was in law enforcement. I worked in the county sheriff's office, and I worked in the jail. I understand policy, procedure, and safety of the jail system. I've served the last 8 years in the House of Representatives. 6 of those years I was on Corrections Commission. And we would meet 2 or 3 times a year, visit facilities, talk to prisoners, inmates, whatever. And we would talk to them, we would talk to staff, we could move about freely within the system. And we would review the program. One of the things that's frustrating is, again, this is a whole lot bigger than just the location for us. I will stand here and tell you that it's my wholehearted belief we do not need a new prison. What we need is a little more space, and we can do that. In fact, the other thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is the half-truths and misinformation coming out of DLC. And trust me, I don't say these things unless I can prove them. But let's start with the first one. The first one is, we were told at one time that the Jameson addition was built to add a second floor. Okay, well, there's some truth to that. Department of Corrections, in fact, Secretary Wasco said it's absolutely untrue. But what I have found is what we call the D wing was built in 2006 and designed for a second and third floor. The D wing added 96 spaces. That's 2 more floors would add another 192 spaces. We could do that for a fraction of the cost. Plus, 2,000 feet away, DOC owns 30 acres of bare ground. They could build 2 more Jameson annexes and add another 2,000 people without having to do anything. The electric, the sewer, industrial, gas, everything is there. So we really don't need this person out there. So that was kind of a half-truth. They said, well, you can't, the Jameson wasn't built for the second floor. That's true. But the omission is, the D-wing was built for a second and third floor. And we verified that with the contractor. So I'm not making that up. I've got so many notes here. The other, you gotta excuse me, I can't see without my glasses here. You probably heard about the metal craft shop, the closure of the metal craft shop. The metal craft shop made $4 million a year. That shop was the metal craft shop. You had inmates working there. They made over $1 million a year money in the pocket of the state. The other money that it made paid for their restitution, for their crimes, and for their incarceration. So, a few weeks ago, I had an op-ed in the Dakota Sky. And it basically said, Secretary Wasco shut down the metal craft. 3 weeks ago at the Corrections Commission meeting, she countered that by saying, I didn't shut it down, they walked away. Okay. Now here's the trick. As I talked to Terry Van Zetten, the guy that ran the metal shop. In December of last year, just before Christmas, Roscoe's staff came in and told him, well, first I'll back up. The staff that ran it, the people that worked there, all of the men that worked there, worked pretty much like they had written sentences or maybe life sentences. Working there gave them something to do other than cause trouble. It gave them purpose in life, even though they were going to be there for the rest of their life. The guards inside tell me those guys were never happy. They worked all day, they ate the dinner, they went back to their cells. They were model inmates. So what happened is Secretary Roscoe's staff came in and told him, you cannot use those workers anymore. What we're going to do is we're going to let you use minimum security inmates. Well, a lot of minimum security inmates are going to be gone in a couple of years. And he said, well, it's going to take me about 6 months to train all these new people and transition to that. And they left and they walked away. They came back 2 weeks later and said, we're pulling your staff today and you get minimum security staff. He couldn't operate that way. He had to walk away. They forced him into walking away, but publicly she's saying, oh, we didn't close them. So you can make up your own mind on how all that transpired. We had room in Sioux Falls. Next thing is I'll talk a little bit about fire. They were about 12 miles out of town, out of Sioux Falls. Guess who's going to have to handle? Right now, there's about 4 or 5 emergency calls to fire rescue every week. They moved down there, and there's going to be between Canton, Irving, and Harrisburg volunteer fire departments. Volunteer fire department said, tell me, I volunteered to fight to save your house, our business is in my house. I didn't volunteer to save the prison. So again, Secretary's response was, we'll have a fire suppression system. Okay, well, my son's a firefighter. He's a professional firefighter out in Billings, Daddy is also a paramedic. And he just said, well, that's kind of ridiculous because every new building has to have fire suppression. Who's going to do the hazmat to clean up and find out what and see what the damage is and structural damage and come in and do the investigation? Well, Sioux Falls is a thing. Sioux Falls Fire Department's already said they're not leaving the city limits. That's another problem. Folks, I could go on for hours and hours about why we do not need to move this city. We have plenty of room. And consider this. This is going to end up being, I know what colors I'm talking about, but all I'm going to talk about is this is going to cost about $1 billion of your money. This isn't just money, this isn't federal money. This is money we've already set aside, most of it. So we have this $1 billion set aside for something that we can probably get by with $150 million, maybe up to $200 million. So that's $800 million of waste just to build a legacy out in the middle of Lincoln County. If you have any questions, I would love to answer them. I like I said, I could go on for hours and hours. The other thing is, 2 more real quick ones. People are thinking, well, they can use the Sanford clinics for the, because about 30 or 40 inmates almost every week, they have to have medical treatment of some type. Right now, there's an arrangement with the contractors with Avera. Avera doesn't have any clinics in that area. So they're going to be tossing these people up to Sioux Falls every day for their dialysis or chemo, whatever kind of treatment that they have. The guards on the inside tell me that the most dangerous job in the prison is transport. Right now they're transporting about 4 miles. Now they're going to transport 16 miles. Can you imagine if you get some people in there that come in together, smash a car into that bus that's taking up there and down money? It's just there's so many things, folks, that just do not make sense. I'm not saying we don't need to do anything about a prison, but I'm saying let's put the brakes on. We don't need to do this year. The one thing we have to look at is they're desperate to spend this $10 million of ARPA money, federal money, because if they don't spend it this year, it goes away. You know what? I'm willing to gamble $10 million for up there, almost any day of the week. I don't really care about that $10 million. One more thing I'll say is, they're promising down the road if they overwhelm the Lennox system with the sewage, that they'll come in and help? No. Every year is a different budget year, and it will take special appropriations from the legislature in that year to help out the sewage system if they overwhelm. So, again, I have 1,000 things I could tell you, but I'll turn it over to that guy.
Okay, Jeff, this is where you come in. What we want to do is take about 5 minutes of time to do questions that we have or points that we would like to make as it regards to anything that Kevin was talking about. As you look through the program, you'll see the different topics that we'll be looking at later on throughout the evening. If you have a question relating to this topic or anything that Kevin asked about, now is the time that we encourage you to ask. If it's a question about a topic in the future, please wait and we will have time to ask that as well. Today's stuff discuss about having the prison built anywhere else besides what we're asking for.
I think the question was there discussion about building anywhere else other than Lincoln County? Yeah, they looked at, Yankton said no. You know, they've looked at expanding it. Actually, they haven't even looked at expanding in Sioux Falls. They just said that's not even on the table, they're not even looking at it. They looked over at Hartford, it's still in Minnehaha County. There's the old West Farm, out where the county owns all that land. The prison owns that land. And they're discounting that too. They are only looking at this piece of land as far as DOCs. All the rest of us is actually in charge of the money. They're not looking at Lincoln County.
I'd also like to say that the study that they hired, the state hired, what was it, $350,000 that study cost? For the Department of Corrections. Actually, in that study said that this is not a good place, this is not a good location to have it out this far away from town. You don't hear anything about that study because they kind of buried it now.
How come more of them can say no, but they don't give us a chance to say no?
The question was, everybody else gets to say no, why can't we? That's probably the best question of the night, because we don't know. There's absolutely, I think it comes down to, you gotta remember, maybe you don't know this, or you can't remember if you didn't know it. Ryan Bruner, who is the Secretary of Corrections under, well, yeah, what's it was? He is now the Director of Corrections under Christy Nolan, not the Secretary, but he works in the office. He was, for 8 years, the Commissioner of Public School and Lands. As Tom mentioned earlier, Public School and Lands inherited this land a number of years ago, and one of the only people probably, I live 7 miles away, I have no clue that it was public land. A lot of people in the area didn't know. Of course, Tom and his neighbors knew it, but it really didn't happen. So when he went into the governor's office, they were looking for signs. I'll be perfectly honest. They called me a year ago in June. Ryan Bruner did. I know Ryan very well. We went to school with our daughter-in-law. But so I've known him for a while. On corrections, on school and public lands, I've always gotten along with him. He's done some good things there. But again, he was probably the only one that knew that site existed. And it wouldn't cost the state anything more than a transfer of money. And I think maybe that's why he was put into that office. But in June, last year, they asked me if I knew of any people that were willing to sell land. And here was the key. Along the interstate, near an intersection on a highway. And I did. I started working with them, trying to find that spot. I found a couple of realtors that knew some places that were for sale or that they would sell. And that was the order of the report. And the day before they announced the assessment reading on the land that they picked, nobody knew it. I didn't know it. Carla didn't know it. Senator Boland didn't want, the county commissioners didn't want. No, in fact, I think the county commissioners still haven't had any communication from corrections at all on any of this. So I guess in the long run, that's why that site probably was picked, because Brian knew it was there.
You had mentioned that they were the there for medical. So when you mean that, but they come in to see Falls for their medical stuff. So Harrisburg has a Stanford clinic, and I don't know if they're getting in a Vera clinic, but would they bring these people into our town? Like if they bring them right into Harrisburg to have their medical work done? Like in a clinic setting? I mean,
So I can speak to a bit on that. So they actually have a clinic, which is a lot like a primary clinic within the prison walls. A lot of what they bring the prisoners out for is truly more of the tertiary cares that you see. So like surgeries, more of your, if you need to see a cardiologist, if you need to see a specialized type of medicine. Other things that you will see is if they need those overnight hospitalizations, more advanced medical care. So they receive a lot of that medical care within the hospital walls. At times they can receive some more minor hospital-like care within the hospital as well. Their contract with Avera to this point now is up, so they actually don't go to Avera or Stanford specifically anymore either. It's now completely wide open, and to my understanding, and I won't say which area or which hospital I affiliate with, but it's open season for both facilities now.
good to know. Thank you.
Yes.
The one thing we need to keep in mind though is that the new prison facility they're proposing, they will have their own clinic facility there. They're also planning to keep the Jameson open and the infirmary and clinic system there. So we're gonna have two. But the Jameson will probably, at least according to what they're telling us now, I have less faith now in what they say than I ever have. But that's the plan right now, is to keep the Jameson open. So we're gonna duplicate all of that. In fact, everything that happens at the Jameson, staffing-wise and everything, will be duplicated. And that's one of the reasons we cannot get even an estimate of what the daily operational cost is, what increases will be. Like Steve said, Steve Huckner, former representative, former speaker, he says it depends on the extent of the injury, where they go.
Kevin, you briefly touched on the sewage, and as this prison expands, if it expands to the point where they close all the other men's prisons, move up other people into that location, how is Lennox going to have to cope with all of the extra that was not figured in at the beginning? And you said that the state would have to add that onto their budget in a year if they were to help Lennox. But is the citizens of Lennox going to get stuck for another expansion, maybe 10 years down the road?
I think I understand the question about, is it expansion of the sewage system or expansion of? Yeah, I know, I looked at the Kello report and some of the reporting on that just happened. And it looks like, they're willing to pay, just like they did. They offered Harrisburg $7.1 million to pay off all of their bonds on the sewage system. And they refused it because the growth of Harrisburg is almost exponential, and it's not going to stop. So some of the worries were that they might be okay for 5 to 10 years, and as Harrisburg grows, adding in that, in fact, they do have a line from Harrisburg to Sioux Falls, but as it grows, then again, the expansion would probably fall on Harrisburg. I would think the same thing would be happening here. for the Lennox folks. In Harrisburg, they promised to reduce everybody's sewage bill by $20. That's not a lot. But anyway, if the sewage system gets overwhelmed here, then the way I understand, I'm not an appropriator, but the way I understand appropriations, I do understand special appropriations. This can't be built in long-term into a long-term budget. They can't hold that money for more than 4 or 5 years. We get 10 years down the road, and the entire new legislature is going to have to say, well, you took it on, you may have to take on the cost too.
So then the citizens would have to deal with it. You said the citizens would have to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, your local council, of course, it wouldn't be a county issue at that point, but so it would be, the town of Lennox would have to deal with it. And if you needed another bond issue to expand it, the cost of sewage could increase for everybody in town.
I got one comment to make on that. So I don't know if everybody realizes that the prison basically, they only need 60, 80, maybe 100 acres to build what they want to do. They've got 320 acres there. Common sense, what do you think they're going to do with the rest of it? It's going to start coming into HUD houses. It's going to secondary programs and stuff like that that's going to come in there. That's all going to come down the sewer line for you guys. So we're talking about 1,500 inmates right now. But what are we going to have in 5 years when they start shutting down other programs, other places, and start building them on that site and bringing that sewage away? One last comment.
I'd like to add one more thing to that. When I questioned that 13-mile line, I talked to a couple of people. There was a gentleman I knew that he was a city manager, maintenance manager at one of our local towns for many, many years. So I called him. I always tell everybody, I'm not the expert on everything, but I know who my experts are. I know who to call. And what he said, they build that 13-mile line, depending on where they put it, and watch carefully where they put it, because all along that line is going to be more valuable, and small additions in town and building sites could pop up, and that's what makes land really, really valuable out in the middle of the rural country, is being able to tie into a sewer system, because then they don't have to build septic, put in septic and all that. So he said entire additions could be built between the prison and here, and they would be able to tie into that way, or they would want to. And I would guess they would probably be able to.
Just a quick statement on perspective of that. They're looking to have 1,500 beds, so 1,500 inmates. You're going to have anywhere from about 250 employees there. Lennox population is about 2,500. This is going to double your load on your sewer system within 5 years that it takes them to build this. So your sewer system right now is outdated. If this goes forward, your sewer system is going to have to be doubled, if not tripled. If you guys have any 10-year growth plan, what we typically do on a sewer system, you got to build for growth. The community wants to keep growing. So you're about a third of what you need to be right now. If your legislature, your council agrees to do this. So just try to keep that in mind. There's a lot of other things that happen.
Can't say that is vote on it.
So I think, knowing that wastewater is a hot topic and we're going to continue into that. I promise that is our next slide. Yes. So we will definitely continue into that and then move as we go through. Okay. Yep. So I think we definitely hit on a lot of that, and obviously that's a big reason why we're here tonight, and we so appreciate the engagement. We're going to keep going with that. So we know as of right now that the utilities for what they've tied into is South Lincoln Rural Water for sure. And we'll continue having conversations with the board of directors with South Lincoln Rural Water. We would love your engagement from that aspect as well. We want to make sure that obviously the citizens that currently inhabit that area have enough for drinking water for our current domestic use, and even those that utilize those types of things for the agricultural pieces that we have. So please make sure that you are in contact with South Lincoln Rural Water if that is who you use for your water. Sewage system. Obviously, sounds to me like the sewage system is a bit outdated in Lennox and that you're currently on a lagoon system. So adding yet another lagoon to me doesn't necessarily make sense. But I think that's something that the city of Lennox has to make as a decision. And it is a large commitment when you look towards the future. And I think those concerns are being raised. And those are questions we ask that you do continue to ask because as we look towards, it's not just your money that you're investing at a local level, it's your money that we're investing at a broader level from a state aspect as well. So we want to continue to ask those questions, bring these things to the forefront. We want to make sure that Lennox is set up for future development and expansion, not just from 13 miles away, that valuable resource is pulled in a different direction from a state entity that isn't paying taxes within Lincoln County. But that wastewater treatment, keep in mind, I know one thing that Kevin didn't touch on, and I'm surprised that you didn't, is that there's special grinders that have to go in because of the things that prisoners will flush. I know that people, in fact, if you pull up the Lennox, your guys' own city website, it tells you right on there things not to flush. Well, prisoners obviously aren't going to pay attention to that, and they're trying to flush things that they shouldn't be having in the first place, whether that be tinfoil or other things that they're going to try and get rid of in a rapid fashion because their toilet is the quickest way out. So keep in mind that there are things that they do get a hold of that they will be flushing, and it's not just your kids flushing their toys. It's tinfoil. It's multiple other things that they are using based on their bad behaviors. If they don't want to get caught with it. I'm not sure how close some of you pay to the news, pay attention, but the sharks and other contraband they do get a hold of. If they need to get rid of it in a quick hurry, they will flush down the sewer system. So keep in mind that the drugs, the paraphernalia, and the other contraband are things that do end up in the sewage system. And we want to keep rural South Dakota as it is, as clean and as nice as possible.
We want to be. We wanted to hear from the Harrisburg mayor as to why they chose to decline
their offer from the state to accept wastewater treatment. Unfortunately, Garrett had a very last minute commitment and can't be here. But note member Michelle Jensen is going to talk through a little bit about that process and what that looks like for the city of Harrisburg as we move forward. So please welcome Michelle.
Thank you, Maddie. All right, so I wasn't planning on standing up here tonight, but like she said, Derek had a last minute emergency come up, so I'm going to try and read a couple of statements to you. I'm just going to tell you about that night that we had at Harrisburg. So there was a Harrisburg City Council meeting in August. There was probably, 150 to 200 people in that gym. So there was a lot of us there. They were actually voting that night. The state had approached Harrisburg with a contract for Harrisburg to take their wastewater. And at that time, they had offered for the initial hooking up to the wastewater plant in Harrisburg, they had offered just shy of $7.2 million, like Representative Jensen said. And so that was what was there. Plus, they had offered various things for how it was going to go in the future. There was a certain number of gallons, this and that, and the other. So that was what was getting voted on. There's a lot of good points that night that a lot of people brought up, whether it was other elected officials or citizens of Harrisburg. And I just thought I would share a couple of those ideas with you guys. Because ultimately, especially those of you that are citizens of Lennox that are in here tonight, this is your decision and this is your town and it is what is gonna impact you, so you guys. So I'm just gonna share a couple of those ideas. One of them that I thought was a pretty important idea that came up that night was that, remember, there's 1,500 inmates. There might be various other things that goes on. There could be various other guards and whatnot. So you're signing up at the very least to take 1,500 people's wastewater, laundry, cooking, showering, all of that. Well, just imagine Lennox built a housing development that was gonna have 1,500 people in it. Well, you know what those 1,500 people are gonna do? They're gonna shop in Lennox. They're gonna buy their groceries. They're gonna spend some of their other money. They're gonna support your businesses. None of this is gonna happen here. So you're strictly signing up to take wastewater, but not get any of the other benefits. So I thought that was kind of an important point. They just talked about it a lot, so I don't know if I can add anything else to it, but the ins and outs of, if a lot of your capacity is, of your wastewater plant is taken up right away by the penitentiary. If Lennox does want to expand, if Lennox wants another industry, you guys have a lovely industrial park on the south side of the city, if you want more of that, well, guess what? You're gonna have to address your wastewater situation first. So that was an important one the other day. I think the feeling in the room that night was, yes, you guys are all residents of Lennox. You're all residents of Lincoln County and residents of South Dakota. And the idea that, you know, into a prison community did not go over well that night. So I feel like a lot of the sentiment in the room had to do with that. I was going to read a statement, the statement that the mayor had given, just said, the one that he had given to Teleway, said that they had gotten offered just under 7.2 million if they had gotten signed up for that, and that the city said no, the Teleway statement. I'd also like to point out that all there in that night unanimously voted no to signing up for the state penitentiary. And to play the last thing that I wanted to touch on, and I read this statement that night, Ms. Fuller, but I'm going to read it again. So we'll see if it happens right. And this actually came from a ex-DOC employee. Inmates will flush anything and everything that will end up in the Harrisburg sewer system. Drugs, tattoo needles, tattoo guns, paper bags, sheets, their clothes, aluminum cans, packaging from their commissary. You name it, if they have access to it and they want to plug a toilet, they will. If the plug passes, it will end up in the city sewage. And then I know Harrisburg has to be clear as it falls. I'm sure they don't want drugs in their sewage that goes to their drinking water once it has been through treatment. So that's kind of a brief overview and some of the sentiments that happened that night. I don't know if I can answer any questions for you, but you can certainly continue to take more time on the wastewater questions people have.
Yeah, so we'll take those 5 minutes, and if we have the answers, we'll gladly open it up. If not, we'll continue to ask as we can, but we just want to pose those questions. It is.
Okay. All right. So I was personally wondering, after you said, like, in between the prison and our community, there would be a lot of different people who are tied into the sewer because of the fact that, like, they don't have to pay to put it in, you know? There would be a lot of different developments and stuff. So who owns that pipe? Would that mean those developments pay the city to tie in? Or does that money go back to, like, the prison and they invested it because it's their money, not ours? Like, how does that work?
Honestly, that's a great question. It hasn't been explored because this kind of information has just only come up recently. The proposal to run over to Lennox here is not that long ago, so we honestly really don't know. The state will own the land, the pipeline. But again, the state could sublease part of that to any development or anything that they could choose to. I don't know how the mechanics of that will work. I don't know if costs for that to be run through appropriations and things, but again, that's just one of the things that the former city manager wanted me
To my understanding, the state is going to provide 10 or 11 miles of pipe to a pipeline, and then Lennox has to provide 1 mile to get outside of the city. Is that correct?
Well, the other thing Representative Halter just brought up is, will they be using eminent domain? Because this is public use. I mean, it is a state system, so where they decide to run that land, you may not order that pipeline. Of course, this isn't like CO2. We don't want to go there. I mean, it might be yucky, but it's not unsafe. But I just want to touch back too on the grinders. One of the former wardens told me that right now they have a screen and a bin system, which kind of holds some of that material back, and a lot of the little things don't go through. But the newer facilities are putting in grinders, and with that much flow through, they would need at least 2 grinders in the system. Basically, it's just everything that comes into the main pipe, they have to grind it before they can push it out the line. So even though it might have come through as fully as needles or anything, or clothing or underwear or anything else, it would be ground up into fine particles that would end up in the detention ponds.
I wanted to ask, at 13 miles away, how did Lennox get roped into this mess?
Well, yeah, I'm just going to speculate, because part of this is speculation. The original plan was to put a 40-acre and zero discharge evaporative sewage plant system on the site. After this is pure speculation. They're trying desperately to find a town to tie it to. They tried $7.1 million of that ARPA money, the federal money, into Harrisburg. Now they want to come here. If they don't go here, I almost bet they're going to try and go to Worthing or some other town. My guess is that after the flooding, they realized that it wasn't a safe place to put a sewage system, and after the soil sampling, maybe they determined that the land wasn't suitable for it. That's just a guess, folks, because otherwise I can't see. Well, I know what they said in the news. They said in the news they would have to hire a crew to maintain these plant systems. And that's true. That is true. So I guess no solid answer, but yes, they would have to maintain it, and it would cost.
So, just to add to that, I talked to Brian Bruner on the phone today, the guy in the, Veterans office, and for this project, and he told me that, he said, we did not ask for this, Lennox approached us. That is what I was told on the phone today.
I don't know if one of our city representatives are in the room and can answer this question for us, but I've gone over the last 4 months worth of meetings for our comment on YouTube, and I'm just curious, when did our city officials give Nate the okay to approach the prison for this? I'm just curious what date, what time, what meeting, because he can't trust it for us, not our council for this. Just wondering.
My apologies, woof. I did want to clarify anything. Those are really great questions. Lennox, the community, does have Nate, the city administrator, is the one who approached the state, is putting together an FAQ sheet, as far as I understand, looking through by mid-October, he wants to release it to the Lennox community. So I'm just making you aware of what the agreement with the state would look like, gallons per day usage, and anything else. So I just want to make sure that we know that is in the works, so we're all on the same page and we don't have any misinformation circulating, to make sure that we are all getting the right information. If anyone that is here representative of the city would like to answer any questions or anything that we may have gotten wrong up to this point in the meeting, we are more than welcome to hear from you, and we would love to. Chad, is that a yes? So we're going to welcome Chad Swear, one of your aldermen, just to share a few thoughts on where we're at and what that looks like from the city to the state and so on.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chad Swear. I'm St. Bowers as well. I think we got Billy Oaks as well. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, we don't have the answers yet. We're here to gather information. No decisions have been made. We're not endorsing or we're not endorsing anything at this point. We're just here to gather information. We're going to do what is best for them. That's what we're focused on. And, we're just trying to understand, is this something good for them? And that's really what we're looking to gather and
Yeah, and I think that was really why we put that out at the forefront, that your city council is here. We do appreciate that, and that's really where this is a Lennox public forum, and we want to make sure it's an informed decision for the entire community.
If you guys do go forward with wanting to do this, are you guys gonna let the people vote on it?
I don't think it's. We haven't even discussed that yet. I don't think this is something that typically would be voted on from a city standpoint, but projects and things are what we're elected to decide on. But we have already had some preliminary discussions. Once we get all the data, once we have all the facts and presented, we want to hold a public forum ourselves, get everyone's input, get everyone's Q&A answers with all the facts once we have them. And we definitely want to do what's best for life. So we want to listen to everybody's input. We want to take everything into account before making any decisions.
So you maybe kind of answered, I should have been more clear when I said it was unanimously voted down. It was the aldermen that voted it down. But I also had a question that played into that from one of the members of the audience. And you guys would be better to answer this. I know the rules in Harrisburg where there is a system, where you can, if there's a vote that the citizens would like to challenge or get put up for a vote, is there a system in Lennox where they collect petition signatures and can get it put up to vote? Do you know that? I was asked that, so.
Yeah, you're talking grinding metals and heavy metals and drugs into the lagoon. What are you gonna do with that waste from the lagoon? Because of the farm, you can't put it on the ground. There is no way you can put that on the ground because in Wisconsin, there's thousands of acres that are contaminated now. They can't even use that ground to go hunting on because the animals in the ground, on that ground, are contaminated so bad they can't eat it.
And that research is still being done, so we don't have that answer.
It's already proven.
We don't have a lagoon system either, so that isn't the type of wastewater treatment that we have here. So that's SBR, so it's a different type.
Last comment. But like for us, we live here. Nate can move on in a few years or whatever he wants to do. But this is our home, and we don't want to destroy it.
We live here as well. We're just as invested as you guys, and we have the same concerns and the same, things that we need to figure out.
I think it's a fair assessment that all the information is not put out. You guys are gonna have public input. We personally understand you guys' concerns. Don't know if this is exactly the direction we want to take all this right now. But one last comment, then we'll move on to the next.
I'm just wondering, was there a meeting with the motion to pursue it and take votes in the affirmative?
Yeah, so just to clarify that, so Nate's our city administrator, right? His job is to bring to the council his recommendations for driving our city forward. This is something that he initiated with our support. He called us as it was going on and individually, and, got our support, and then we discussed it at the next city council meeting, we discussed it at each subsequent council meeting. So he hasn't made any decision to do anything, he's not gonna make any decision, it's gonna be coming from the council, and we're just in the middle of that evaluation, where we think it's gonna make sense for us.
Briefly, you do have, you have in the U.S. Constitution, you have the right to address your grievances with your bill of rights.
One last comment with that, even though you got all the sewer coming in, the amount of water that you guys are gonna consume in order to get rid of the sewage is gonna be astronomical. You're gonna have to increase your water usage to deal with the town as well. Matthew, back to you.
Thank you so much, Chad and Sam and Billy. We truly appreciate you being here and being willing to answer these questions. I know that they're tough and you are in the process. We truly do appreciate it. What I loved hearing is that you too also want to have a public forum to kind of gauge where your citizens are at. And I think that's a great way to help your community make an informed decision. So while we can't make that decision tonight, we just wanted to bring that up. And I truly appreciate you being willing to participate in this conversation. And we look forward to hearing about those frequently asked questions and looking for those answers from Nate as well. We do want to move on. All right, we do want to move on to our next speaker, looking at the lack of infrastructure, public transit, and social support that a state penitentiary would have in Lincoln County. So looking at things like water, which we've mentioned, electric, sewer, roadways, etc. Looking at things like visitors, how are they going to get to this location in rural Lincoln County? Public transportation is non-existent in Lincoln County. What do the inmates look like with no public transportation? And then what would the mode of transportation be for inmates not meeting parole and no longer in state custody? Currently, when they are released from the pen, that is what happens. They are released from the pen. So when we look at it in this location, we don't have a bus stop within the block like the current facility, correct? So what does that look like? That leads us to the lack of support for offenders and families. Sioux Falls offers so much social support that unfortunately Lincoln County just cannot provide for the incarcerated and the families of those incarcerated. They have so many social support systems, a few of which think of things like the Banquet, St. Francis House, Falls Community Health, and the Glory House that are there to support inmates and the families of inmates and the inmates once they are released. Lincoln County can't offer that same support, unfortunately, at this time. And that leads us to the idea of eminent domain. So when this happens, firstly, we need to look at what is eminent domain. Eminent domain is referring to the power of the government to take private property and convert it into public use, referred to as taking. So when we look at moving a facility from Minnehaha to Lincoln County, saying that we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the social support, will they need to turn to eminent domain? So with us this evening, we'll move on to our next speaker. We have Sarah Seaver with us. Sarah is here with us to speak a little bit about the eminent domain process and what that could look like if this facility were to move through in Lincoln County. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Sarah Seaver, and my husband and I have the Seaver House Bed and Breakfast. It's a place just north and east of town here. You drive by it every time you go to Sioux Falls. You go by next. And also our son and his wife live on the farmstead next to it. So my husband's family and I have been on that land since 1892. My son is the sixth John Seaver to live on that land, so we're really proud to be part of the Lennox community, and we are part of the community. This is where we go to church. This is where our kids go to school. This is where we shop. We are huge supporters here, and that's important for a reason, which I'll come back around to. But I just want to know that you are part of, I am part of your community, and you are part of my community, and a place that we're proud to be part of. So I'm going to represent a perspective on property rights and eminent domain. Because of our farm and home and our son's farm and home, it's been part of a couple of eminent domain issues. One was the Lewis and Clark water pipeline that went through a long time ago. And when that happened, even though we wanted water to go through, we knew Sioux Falls needed water, we supported that. We also knew that we needed to get just compensation for it, which is an important component of what's going to happen if this goes through. So we lawyered up, we also organized our neighbors, and we got what we thought was actually just compensation for it. Many years later, now of course the carbon pipelines are going through. And if you've driven past our place, you've seen our signs, because we're not cool with this one. This is not cool, going through our area, it's not safe, and none of us are safe, actually, if this does end up happening. But that's also the process of eminent domain that can happen. And it's important, I think, to take a step back and just understand, and I'm going to read a quote, what property rights actually mean. Property rights aren't just for farmers or even acreage owners. Property is what separates one individual from another, and individuals are only free to the extent that they have sole or exclusive dominion over their property. You all go to work every day so that you can acquire property and the freedom that comes with it. And that's true of everyone in Lennox. It's true of your neighbors that are between here and the other community of Beaver Creek. And ironically, Beaver Creek runs through our property and ends up over by Decision, which is the way South Dakota works, of course. We're all connected to each other. But those people are your community too, and I want you to remember that. And it matters. When you think about what's going to happen here, it's going to be a huge impact on you, but it's also going to be a huge impact on the people in the path of that. 13 miles of eminent domain that's going to happen. So what happens when eminent domain occurs? Well, first you get a little visit. And if you're a widow, like my mother-in-law was when it first happened, they absolutely tried to take advantage of her and give her this, sign these papers right here. Fortunately, she called my husband, and we were able to put a stop to that and intervene there and get organized. So that happens. There's also surveys that happen. If it actually does go through, there's a lot of disruptions to the land. You never get your land reclaimed the same, because I can guarantee you the state is going to take the lowest bid for the pipeline company, right? So they're not going to put your topsoil back on top. It's just not how it's going to end up working. You will lose productivity in that farm ground. But you will also lose your dreams. A lot of these people that live on acreages, and Michelle Jensen, I'm pointing at you, you know, people who buy land thinking they're going to move to the country, and they save up and they work their whole lives for it. And then to have someone come in and just drop that bomb on them through eminent domain is just not very American, I guess, in my book. So let's talk a little bit about just compensation, because those easements are forever. And I do just want to remind you that the civic community and that eminent domain is pretty disruptive. And there are people here who've made a lot better case than I'm going to be able to make for why the prison does not belong in this community. And I absolutely believe they're right, and I absolutely believe that every one of you have just as much voice as the governor of the state or the mayor of Sioux Falls, and that you need to be making our voices clear. You need to show up at your council meetings. You need to attend and support the people that you help them make the right decision, and then support them, because they're probably going to need it, and you need to know what's going on. Frankly, you need to be attending the Lincoln County meetings as well, because there's a lot of stuff that happens there that you would be shocked about. Okay, so I want to share with you what I think we're going to lose if we don't get organized on this. And I say this even knowing that there are instances like there was with the Lincoln County rural water that went through that it wasn't necessary. These people are going to have to get attorneys. There's a huge amount of expense that happens with these attorneys, but I will say if this does end up going through, please get organized. Please help these people get organized. If you know anyone that's in the path here that's not, please let them know. They need to know that this is happening. And as was true with the carbon pipeline, there are people who are in, frankly, a kill zone for that carbon pipeline who have no idea it's happening because they don't have to be informed. So you need to help people to get the word out and let them know that this is coming their way. And the easements that come from this are likely forever. You don't get to control that land. That land that the pipeline is in isn't anything you can build on anymore. So if you think you've got housing eligibilities, you probably don't. But also, as I mentioned already, it matters who puts in the pipeline because the land doesn't go back in the way we think it is. And what is the just compensation for having the multi-generational land disrupted and your rights taken forever? And what is just compensation for having everything you worked a lifetime for taken away? What is the price of your dreams? And there are things in this world that are just priceless, and I would say our community is one of those. I sincerely hope that you'll do everything you can to push back against this idea, because this prison does not belong in the fastest growing county in South Dakota. And I hope you will think of your neighbors, and that's me, and that's all those people between here and Green Creek community, and you'll make the decision that will not let them be impacted in the devastating way. Thank you.
Any questions on the topic of eminent domain? Okay. I'm gonna segue in, as Sarah led us in beautifully towards what our personal economic impact would look like. As we lead towards, obviously there's gonna be real estate price changes with that. Hopefully this carries a little bit better. Real estate price changes, our taxes as we experience year after year, as we're gonna experience increased, paved roads, sewage is obviously going to increase, water increase, power and gas needs. Keep in mind, this 1,500 bed facility, these people are not going to be paying taxes. There's going to be legal representation. Yes, there was a bill passed last year that there will be legal representation, there will be coverage from that from the state aspect. However, there's going to be increased legal coverage when you're considering that a lot of these lawyers are going to be traveling from Sioux Falls. That is going to be coming from Sioux Falls. They will bill per hour when they're traveling. And again, it is a state expense, so regardless if it's local or state, we're still paying for that. Population of Minnehaha County, when we take a look at that, it's more than double of where we are in Lincoln County, even if you add 1,500 non-tax-paying citizens. When we look at what that county economic impact is, so in our school district impact, again, consider that we're going to be, again, not receiving those taxes. When we look at the huge growth that we have seen in Lincoln County, Harrisburg has obviously grown astronomically, and we continue to put schools up, and continue to fund those pieces, as we should. We want to invest in the growth, and that youth, and making sure that we are funding the future of our youth. Minnehaha public defender budget, when we look at that, that was $5.9 million last year. Lincoln County public defender budget last year was $0. And that's what we use as legal defense when you look at that. So that was in regards to that bill that was passed. So when you look at the prison disruption that happened this year, all of those court costs that will be coming from the charges that were filed by the Attorney General, those are all going to have to be trialed in Minnehaha County. If that were to happen in Lincoln County, those trials will all happen in Lincoln County, and otherwise Lincoln County would be footing that bill. So that just gives a little bit of context of what that indigent legal defense and what that means. So there is a one-time payout of $3 million total for Minnehaha County to receive, where there is just over $900,000 for Lincoln County to receive, with just over, close to that $200,000. So there's a huge economic impact when we look at it from a county. There's a huge disparity. And as we lead into that, I'd really love for Carly to talk a little bit more on what that county economic impact will be for us, especially when we hone in on that District 16 section for us.
All right, thank you all for coming tonight. It's a pleasure to be with you, and even though it's on this topic, this is how good government happens. And I'm so glad that you're all here to hear the information. We are all on a fact-finding mission together. So, Michelle asked me the other night, she's like, can you be there Wednesday night to talk about this? And I'm like, Sure. What do you want me to talk about? She's like, infrastructure. I'm like, okay. And so we have some figures that we have been given as state officials. There is, many of this stuff is a guess because we don't even have really the whole plan laid out for us yet. We're supposed to get some hard figures in November. That's the plan. So tonight, some of the stuff I'm gonna give you is concrete and some of it is a guess, okay? And I'll try to clarify which is which. So, coming up to tonight, since Sunday on, I've spoken to, well, some of these people I spoke to before, but I've spoken to a couple of our county commissioners. I know I've spoken to Jim Driven, I've spoken to Jim Schmidt. Basically, both of them are saying, we haven't heard anything. We don't know. They tried to get information too, and that's just how it is. I spoke to Brian Bruner on the phone today. I spoke to him previously. I was on prison tour not long ago, and we were able to ask questions on that, many of us legislators. I spoke to members of the Appropriations Committee. I called the Minnehaha auditor, and I spoke to one of the Minnehaha County Commissioners today, trying to see if we could get some comparisons. How much does it cost Minnehaha County to have a penitentiary in Minnehaha County? We're not going to comparing apples to apples there, but just to kind of get a gauge of how much. And I don't even know at this point, I haven't heard back if they actually have a breakout of that or not. This is some of the things we're after though. Obviously, I've spoken to many landowners. I've spoken to Secretary Wasco. So before we get into this, the cost factor of this, I wanted to point out that on the floor of the House, that it was stated that this would be built in Sioux Falls area, and it would be built in Minnehaha County. Yet here we are tonight, and we know that that is not the case. So even when we are voting on some of this stuff in here, we don't always get the clear information until after the fact. So I just wanted to point that out. So how much money does it cost for a new prison? So this will be the costliest project in our state's history, a 1,500 bed men's prison. So we were told in 2022 by a company called DLR. Now I handed some of these out to you guys. I have a few extra copies here if anybody wants to come up and grab one, but it looks like this. So they were asked, and I wasn't in the legislature yet, but the Department of Corrections had asked, there were 18 projects that they wanted to get a cost on of how much it would cost to do this project. And what this DLR group came up with, which I spoke to actually John Mills, who is on our Appropriations Committee. He is in construction. He has worked with this company before, so they're very reputable. And so the cost on those 18 projects that we were given, this is dated January of 2022, the cost was $608 million for all those 18 projects, and there was, inflation was built into those numbers. All right? So now we are told, and the DLR, by the way, is an architectural and engineering firm. And they said in this report that the men's prison, the number one thing on the list was $338,500,000 approximately. Now we are told, because we got an estimate from a different company, we are now told that we're looking at about $700 million, and one of the appropriators I talked to, and some others as well, are saying it's probably going to be over $1 billion. All right, so again, that's the number we're all looking for that we don't really know, and we're supposed to get those hard figures in November. Okay, so that 2024 figure was $700 million. So according to Wasco, designers and construction managers have now come up with that new figure, and the Bureau of Finance and Management also has said that cost could grow to $700 million, which we now say could be $1 billion, right? So that's over double in 2 years' time. So I am very, very concerned about these costs because this is just the construction cost. This is not the ongoing operations cost of what this is going to be. And remember, we're still going to have the Jameson and Sioux Falls going as well, along with our other prisons throughout the state. So
Are there other, prisons costing this much? During session, I brought up Nebraska. Nebraska is building a new prison. Their prison costs, and I just looked it up because I was told the other day by an official in South Dakota that, well, Nebraska's costs are off from what they're saying. Well, according to an August, article, they're still saying the same that we had before. $350 million for a new penitentiary in Nebraska for a 1,500 bed facility, the same that we're building here. And the differences are the security level of the inmates, which I asked Wasco, Secretary Wasco, that's on the prison tour, and she clarified, it's not the cell that is different, it's what's in the cell that makes it higher security or not. It's not like the bars are thicker or anything like that is different. It's these prisoners that are within. So obviously you're gonna have more guards, and you know, I know there's other things that go with that, but basically that's what makes it a different level. And Nebraska site, this is also in this article that I have up here if you want to see it. Nebraska site is very near electricity, water, and sewer lines. So they're not gonna have all of these extra infrastructure costs, or not as much as what we're gonna experience in South Dakota coming all the way out to where they wanna put the prison here. So we have to ask, why did we switch from the DLR figure to this other figure? And that's what was told me by one of our appropriators. Why did we do the switch? So currently, we have $569 million in the incarceration construction fund in the state, with $62 million of that in the prep area. Of that $62 million, $22 million has already been spent on this site. Now remember, I told you on the floor of the House, we were told we are not saying, we're not voting on where the location is yet, but yet we're spending all this money. Okay? And the funds for water and sewer would come out of the ARPA funds. You guys are familiar with ARPA funds, that's the COVID money. Okay? And so I believe that the amount set aside for that is $10 million. Now, I believe that Lennox, Harrisburg would have got 7.2, because that's how much I guess they would have needed. Yours from what the newspaper article said was 4.5 million. All right, so that's where, but that has to be locked in, and correct me if I'm wrong, that has to be locked in November, this November, or else it goes away. Okay, now that doesn't mean there aren't other water projects in the state that could use those. Okay, so, but they're wanting to kind of probably put some pressure on and say we gotta have this locked in. So that's $10 million. I was told from, for the Lennox project, that this was from Ryan Brunner today, there is a feasibility study underway from SARE and an estimated cost that they are waiting from them, but they do not have that yet. So that is still, we're still waiting on that to see if this is even feasible. And how much is it gonna cost for the pipe? I had heard from someone it could be about $5 million. Again, that's a guess. I asked Brian Berger today, where will that pipe go? He said it will go in the right of way. That's where they would put it. How many lift stations? He said right now they're looking at one lift station. I had somebody else tell me, since we're going the wrong direction really, we may need two. We may need two of those lift stations. How much water is it going to use? Anywhere from 175,000 to 225,000 per day. Okay? And the cost you pay per gallon, you, and you, most likely, you're going to be paying more per gallon than what a big facility like that. They're going to get a break, on the water. So, they are going to have a water tower, and that is for fire purposes. I asked about that. And so they would need a water tower there. Again, South Lincoln Rural Water is going to be providing the water, and Southeast Electric would be the electric company. So how much will this cost the county? Well, of course, we've got roads. They don't know yet how many roads they're going to put in. They don't know if they're going to go all the way, and of course, this is 278th Street, if they're going to go to 115. or if they're gonna go all the way to the interstate. They also would go up, from what I'm told, they think, to the Klondike Road, which is 276. So again, we're guessing. Now, I have been told that it's, it could be like 5 miles of paved road. Again, is that gonna be 2 lane? Is that gonna be 4 lane? We don't know, but a roundabout figure may be $100 million for the roads. All right? And whose cost is that going to be to maintain those roads? Is that gonna be on the county? I asked that question today as well. He said, well, we would hope they're hoping, and the idea would be that the state would take care of all of those costs. He said, we already have the state highway 115. We have, the county is highway 11 there. But he's like, it's not that far to come over to maintain those roads. However, Lincoln County could do a swap, with them, he said, for like an interchange or something like that, that we could, maybe they would take over this and we could take over that, or, they do those kinds of things as well. How much is the added cost to our law enforcement? I think that Kaya spoke to that a little bit. I was at a CCOG meeting today, which is the Southeast Council of Governments. So there were several counties that met right here in Lennox. And we talked about, I believe it was the commissioner from Yankton that was speaking at one of the other prison sites. And they said, when people get out of the prisons there, they tend to stay. They tend to stay in the area. And then again, that could be more added costs for our county to deal with if these people get in trouble in our county. We're gonna have to foot the bill again for, defending them and, trying them and all of that kind of stuff. So that is an issue too. I will wrap this up because I want to go on. So those court costs and the visitors to the area, all those added visitors that need services, that need, some, you see Falls, they already have the banquets, they have these other places that are available for people to come. Not that everyone needs them, but a lot of those people do. And we don't have anything like that out where we are in this prison, in this area. So, the state will not be paying taxes on that land. Remember that. So we are waiting on a guaranteed price in November, but the legislature still needs to vote to appropriate the money. So why should you and Lennox care? Because this is your money and your neighbor's money. Whether it comes out of our county coffer or not, this is all our money. This is our taxpayer money, and we really need to be careful. Because this is, again, like I said, the biggest expenditure our state has ever had before. We are one county that could all be affected by what this brings. And one way or another, whether county or state taxes, I already said that, we will all be paying for this. So let's be wise stewards and look at this from every angle before anyone signs on the dotted line. Thank you. I think what you're referring to is the referred law 21. That doesn't deal with eminent domain itself, but it does deal with local control. And so that is something that you guys, that will be we have seven ballot measures that will be on the ballot on November 5th when we go to vote. And maybe some of you have already voted, So, but RL 21, that does deal with local control. We want to maintain local control. We don't want to lose that. So that's why that is on the ballot. That's why that was brought forward. I will be voting no.
We are going to take 5 minutes to ask any questions pertinent to the information that Carla shared with us that she could speak on. So we'll take 5 minutes for that before we move on to our next topic and next guest speaker. John, go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is a little broader question, but it kind of relates to all of this, and it's for Carla and Kevin. I feel like a year ago there was a sense that this was going to happen regardless of any of this, which didn't exist, much didn't exist back then. I think Kevin, you told me that alternative. I'm not sure how much conversation you're having with your fellow lawmakers, but do you see that shift? Do you see a realistic possibility of lawmakers saying, hey, let's do Jameson, hey, let's do another option?
What I would tell you is when I went on the tour the other day of the prison, there was probably about 20 of us legislators that went. And I was also at a meeting in Mitchell the night before we went on that tour. There are a lot of people asking a lot more questions now than what we had then, because we keep finding out more information. And the more questions we have, the more questions we have, because we're not getting the answers. And so we should not, as legislators, go forward with something like this with such a huge dollar amount and something that is not going to be a one-time deal. I mean, this is in the next 100 years. We better make sure that we got the right location, the right building, and that this is really what is going to be right for South Dakota before we say yes.
Okay, thank you. When all of this first started, most legislators didn't even have any understanding of what was going on with the new prison location. In fact, as Carla alluded to, at least twice on the floor, the legislators were misled, saying, number one, it would be in Lincoln, or in Minnehaha County, and the other, there was a couple, I hate to use the word lies, but there were a lot of people misled in the vote to move that money into the incarceration fund. The more we get this in the public view, the more times we're on the news, the more times we have forums like this, the more legislators we're getting asking those questions. We have, like Carla said, we have every time we ask a question, we get more questions. This isn't, I would say right now, this is not a done deal, it's not cut and dry. I did work with Chris Barber, he's the vice chair of appropriations, he's been the chair of appropriations. Talked to him last week. My concern was that if the legislature takes a 2/3 vote by both houses to spend the money, so we moved the money over the last 2 years into the incarceration fund with a 2/3 vote. My question was specific. Now that the money is there, do we need just a simple majority to spend it? And he adamantly said no. It's going to take a 2/3 vote in both houses. We're gaining ground. I have over a dozen legislators in the Senate that are asking a lot of questions. It's going to be a close vote, but right now, I would say we voted today. It's up in the air, but the more we bring these questions to the table, the more legislators are finally starting to understand this isn't just a new building. I mean, this changes the incarceration across the state for another 100 years. And like Carla said, we got to get it right. And I don't want to be one of those legislators that voted to get it wrong.
All right, we're going to take one more question and then we're going to move on to the next speaker so we can remain respectful of everyone.
This is a quick question. Listening to all the discussion here. They're talking about the capacity up to 1,500 inmates. What is the capacity right now? And if it isn't 1,500, are they planning to bring in inmates to other seats or repeat? To fill it up? To 1,500.
I believe that the penitentiary, is it 800? Or inmates on the hill. Okay, penitentiary has 779 and Jameson has 476 right now, but he's asking about capacity. Steve is going to speak on that when he talks, so he'll cover that, what capacity we have. Thank you.
All right, so as you see next in the program, we have medical emergency response, which Kevin was able to touch on earlier, as well as law enforcement response, which he was able to insightly teach us about. Next, workforce impact. So what is this going to look like for staffing? This all leads to incarceration rates and what's going on within the DOC at this point in time. What would happen with a larger facility? What is going on with the current location? And then the large question of why. So to answer some of those questions, we have former Speaker of the House, Stephen Hubbard, to talk to us a little bit about that.
Thanks very much. I just want to touch on a few things that have already been mentioned. One, if we're talking about pipeline running with Lennox, it's a big issue for you folks. I would say if I and Joel are sitting around for a few minutes, we come up with a lot of other liability issues. And just off the top of my head, I'm thinking, what's the liability of Lennox if there's catastrophic failure in your sewage system and you're still having to service the penitentiary? Who's going to be responsible for that? What happens in the interim? So that's just one question. I'd be really careful about those contracts if you're going to look down the road for something like that. Also, I think starting out, I don't think we should be conceding the idea that the penitentiary is ancient and we've got to replace it. We just spent, I think it was $8 million in the past 5 years to build the medical unit up there. The Unit D is less than 20 years old, and the Jameson unit is less than 30 years old. And that houses the bulk of the dangerous prisoners. The whole idea of corrections, and there's two words that I like to focus on, corrections and penitentiary. The idea of corrections is you should have a policy of how you're going to correct somebody's behavior, and the penitentiary is established so you make people become penitent. And the whole idea here is to change behavior. Our recidivism rate is significantly higher than most states. I made reference to this in one of the appropriations meetings last spring. The Secretary of Corrections disagreed with me, but as I pointed out to her, she's going by 3-year numbers, I was going by 5-year numbers. If you look at recidivism, in the first 3 years, the parole officers are going to overlook a lot of things. They're not going to jerk people back into the system. They might not get prosecuted in 3 years. In 5 years, you're going to see those things happen. And that's why our recidivism rate showed significantly higher than most states. In states that, I spoke at a corrections conference in Louisiana a few years ago, and then also Texas adopted the same approach as Louisiana. They have a low recidivism rate because they're pouring money into vocational training, rehabilitation, and education. That's where the money needs to go. And the facilities we currently have in Sioux Falls are perfectly adequate for the true needs for those who need to be incarcerated. 95% of those people that are up there now, they will be standing next to you in the checkout line at Walmart in the next few years. So why do we treat them like a caged animal? And that's what's really happening right now. I'm afraid that the reason for that, taking away the programs, taking away the Braille program, all sorts of things that were very productive, I'm afraid the reason for that is to show that this is an antique facility, we've got to replace it. And sadly, that is not the situation, and it's just being misused. And it's being misused at the expense of the safety of the correctional officers and the inmates themselves. So, the first thing you should consider is, do we even need a new penitentiary? And I would say the answer is no. I would say that we've got plenty of land up here if we need to expand with newer facilities. And in fact, I just saw, somebody brought this to my attention the other day, the whole city bank complex up there, the old building up on the north side, $33.8 million should buy that entire section up there. That has more capacity than you'd ever need for good vocational training and education and rehab. And that would make sense, but that's not even on the table. They continue to talk about somebody's legacy down here to build this new facility. And that's what you should consider. What are we doing with this? In fact, when you build it here in Sioux Falls, you're cutting off a lot of family contact that exists in West River. If you take it out of Sioux Falls and put it down in Lincoln County, you're make it even more difficult. We still have the prison farm out there by Hartford that could be used again. When I first started law practice 41 years ago, I would go out there to see inmates once in a while. Perfectly productive land, they had something to do, their lives were changing. And our recidivism rate back then was significantly lower. And the staff was safe, the inmates were safe. There are those handful of people that are dangerous, and we've got plenty of capacity at Jameson to handle that. And, as was mentioned, you could add a second floor on Unit D, which takes another, I think it's 192, I think it's 96 times 2. So there are options that are out there, they just haven't been explored. And when I planted one of the questions on the Appropriations Committee a few weeks ago, I asked one of the members to ask Secretary Wasco this question. Has she met with, she's the Secretary of Corrections. I asked her, had the question asked, have you met with the Supreme Court Chief Justice about how criminal justice is being addressed? Have you met with the UJS system representative? Have you met with the State Attorneys Association? Have you met with the Public Defenders Association? The answer was no. You're the Secretary of Corrections. You should go out and talk to people about public policy in regard to corrections. We haven't revisited corrections or criminal justice since Janklo's era, probably in the early 1980s. And back then, that was a whole different culture. That was a culture of people that could respond to corrections and incarceration. That's not what we have today. What we have today is an out-of-control drug problem, and it's not being adequately addressed. So you're going to have these people incarcerated for a period of time, then you're going to dump them back out on the street before they've actually gotten that issue under control in their life, oftentimes without any education, oftentimes without any vocational planning. And so those are the bigger issues. This whole idea about should Lennox take the sewage from the penitentiary, should Lincoln County take the penitentiary and establish it down there, those are truly secondary issues, but they become hot button issues right now because all of a sudden the whole state is told we're going to put a penitentiary in Lincoln County at $1 billion. And we haven't even begun to pay the staff adequately to save it. There's a tremendous turnover right now. And I can guarantee you that if you jack those wages up to a competitive rate to even like the Sioux Falls Police, you'd see those Sioux Falls police officers going up there to work. But it's not like that anymore. We have a person here tonight, Mrs. Johnson. Her husband was the one who was killed at the penitentiary. And that was back when there were still people that wanted to live there or work there as a career. And a lot of those folks in the past few years have left because they can see this is not being handled correctly. So that's a larger issue. But, you know, you look at all these other issues for the state of South Dakota, you know, what about the family contact? And the key thing here is this report that we paid $250,000 for about the facilities in the state. And the first line in the executive summary says, absent significant criminal justice reform, this is what we propose. So at the preface of the report, they say, if you're not going to do anything different, if you're just going to keep locking people up, expecting the same recidivism rate, then here's what you got for facilities. Then they propose, just like Representative Lennox mentioned, they propose these facilities and they give certain numbers with the inflation numbers built in, but now all of a sudden we're being told, no, that isn't quite right. And their focus back here with this was to build a variety of facilities across the state. We've got so many things that are so screwed up in the state of South Dakota right now. Just a couple of examples. We have about 75 beds down at the Yankton facility, which is a brand new human services center in the past 30-some years. 75 beds are shut off because we don't pay the staff enough. You go up to Redfield State Hospital. If you've ever been up there, beautiful big campus. At one point in the early 1960s, there were 1,198 people that were cared for there. Now we're down to 65. And we're still paying the freight for the whole facility. That means we're paying over $400,000 per person per year to keep them there. We have such a lack of comprehensive planning across the state, whether it's mental health or corrections. We're just not addressing the core issues. So then we end up with this corrections issue that nobody has a clue about, and all of a sudden they just spring on Lincoln County after the session is over, we're going to build this facility down there. And as Representative Jensen mentioned, that was absolutely contrary to what was referenced on the House floor when Representative Van Huysen was talking about we need to move this money. He specifically said that there's no location decided. None of this will be a firm decision until the next legislative session. And that is simply not true based on what's happened at this point. So those are just some of the basics. As mentioned too, if you're going to spend $1 billion on a building, that building is going to shape the corrections policies for the future for the next 50 to 100 years. And we shouldn't become a place where we're trying to solicit out-of-state incarceration. That's just not our job. And there's no reason why we shouldn't have West River facilities of some sort. And most of these should be minimum security. They don't need to be built as they're proposing with this building. This is built with the idea that any cell could be a maximum security cell. That is not what we need. We've got the vast majority of those people are minimum to medium security people, and most of them need drug and alcohol rehabilitation. So that's where our focus should be. It hasn't been. There's no leadership. It's very frustrating, especially I served in the legislature for 8 years, speaker for a couple of years, and on the appropriations for a couple of years. And you see the money that's squandered in our state, and this is a tremendously sad example of what is being proposed right now, that we're going to squander upwards of $1 billion on a bad location with all sorts of questions that arise. Any activity that takes place within that penitentiary becomes a Lincoln County issue. So again, prosecution in Lincoln County would become significant. The defense in Lincoln County would become significant. The distance between the facilities in Sioux Falls for medical treatment is significant. And every mile that you travel on the way to a hospital with a prisoner is another mile of risk. So those are just some basic issues. I'd be glad to answer any questions. There's some graphs. I don't know if we've got it up here. You can see the recidivism rate in the incarceration rate in South Dakota compared to the United States on average to other countries. You can go on YouTube and look up an easy example of the Norwegian model of incarceration. As soon as somebody hits the doors of prison in Norway, they're evaluated for their education, their vocational training, and their needs for rehabilitation for drug and alcohol use. Those are the key issues. And that's what should be happening in our state as well. When I first started law practice, there were somewhere around 500 people in the penitentiary. That number is at least 5 times what it was back then. And there's no excuse for that. Our population has increased by 150,000, 200,000 people. Certainly not 5-fold increase like it is now. So those are questions that should be asked. And any of these communities, you get to know that if a pipeline is running from the Penn or the Lennox for sewage treatment, you have no idea what's really going to happen with that in the years to come. If you're going to be burdened with some new requirement for treatment of that, and as I mentioned, what happens about the liability issues, if you all of a sudden have a failure in your system, what are you going to do? Who's responsible? Are you going to be sued by the state of South Dakota for the failure that they have to pick up for the loss? There's, like I said, more questions than answers, and all those things should be nailed down with specificity if this was a thoughtful plan and everybody agreed that this makes sense, we should put this facility in that location, and that the old facility absolutely has to be torn down. But that isn't the way this is going. And the vast majority of special incarceration needs is being met at Sioux Falls right now, and there's extra 20 to 30 acres right there that could be used as it is. So lots of things that have not been contemplated, and they need to be answered before this gets pushed ahead. It was very deceptive the way it was presented in the House. went back and listened to that presentation again. It just shouldn't happen. So I hope that they'll stop this as the next session starts. Questions?
I'm not sure if this is the time to ask this or not, but I was wondering about property taxes in Lincoln County. How will this affect the average homeowners, business owners, and their property taxes? Like, how much is it gonna cost us, we the people, to have this prison in Lincoln County? Is it more, amenities that we're gonna have to pay for, like help with like a glory house, all those types of things to help with, like, how is that gonna affect us as like homeowners and our bottom dollar? Because Lincoln County has already been very aggressive in like property taxes the last few years. And so I'm just wondering the impact on all of Lincoln County for property taxes.
Just like Carla mentioned, every time there's a meeting like this, there's more questions asked with more answers required. They just aren't there as far as answers. And I would say that those opt-outs and all those kinds of things have probably become a real reality for Lincoln County if this goes forward. A lot of unknowns, and as I mentioned, you've got defense costs, you've got prosecution costs, you've got medical costs that might take place as well. So there's all those issues that could arise. And when you talk about taxes, that's become one of my pet peeves. The real estate tax in South Dakota is out of control, and nobody has paid any attention to that. So those kinds of answers should be in place before penitentiary is built. We haven't revisited our tax structure since 1972.
Does all really start with juveniles?
Question was, does all basically start with juveniles? That's a lot of it, you know, and we've allowed our juvenile justice system to get morphed into a variety of things. A number of those places in South Dakota now are farmed out to private organizations to address the juvenile concerns. So we don't have a comprehensive plan. We don't have a cohesive plan between juvenile justice and adult criminal justice.
Steve, I think what we learned tonight is, yes, we all have a lot more questions than we have answers to, and we can specifically see that there are areas where this just wasn't a well thought out process, and we really need to take a look at that. One of the largest pieces that we've been struggling with this entire piece is the lack of governmental transparency that's taken place and the lack of communication that the state has provided in this decision. And to share with us her experience with the South Dakota Department of Corrections and their level of transparency, we bring to us our final guest speaker tonight, Lynette Jones.
Okay, well, excuse me, I'm Lynette Johnson. I'm Senior Correctional Officer Ronald R.J. Johnson's wife. My husband was murdered in 2011 at the penitentiary, the attempted escape. I didn't plan on being here or saying anything, but you're talking water. I talked in Harrisburg, you're talking sewage, you're talking property taxes, you're talking, and that's all right. That's all right. But you have to consider this being out here. You've got a blizzard. They decide to riot. How long have they been locked down right now? You have the inmates that aren't getting calls. They're not able to see their families. That makes it double hard on the correctional officers because they're having to deal with it and they're having to listen to it. It's dangerous. It is dangerous. And what they tell you, it's not the truth. And I'm sorry, Kelly Wasco, if you're watching, if there's this live stream, I don't know. Kelly, her and I have talked. You're not going to get the truth. And what about all this money? My husband was murdered because of money and deal making. And no transparency to what the heck was going on at the time. Right now, our correctional officers are going to work, walking through those gates every single day, not knowing. They don't know if there was a bomb. They don't know who was threatened. They don't know. All they know is that they're going through everything. Well, what are you going through for? They have a right to know. The inmates have a right to know. There is enough room up there to fix the problem. Yes, the housing, it could be done. You guys, it's not about the sewer where the building is. If it's there, use it. They have taken away all of their classes. The metal shop. I don't know about the grill. And yes, you had some lifers in there, but I'm telling you right now, the lifers are running that penitentiary the best they can with the help of the officers, because the officers, there's not enough. And you've got your gangs that are coming in. And yes, you asked about other states inmates. Oh, hell yes. They're coming in. But the inmates, the officers, you need to get them back to classes, to jobs. And then someone said they don't get paid enough. Okay, I don't know anything about that either. All I know is that we need to go back to my husband. My husband was respected by the officers. He was respected by the inmates. This has to go two ways. You just don't get the truth out of here. You truly don't. Kelly Wasco, please do not let another correctional officer die. And let me tell you, it only takes a few minutes. It only takes 30 seconds. And you've lost your life. Please, you need to be involved. I wasn't that involved in all of this because I've been trying to help the officers. The officers are overworked. They're understaffed. And they're mentally, emotionally drained with this lockdown. Have you guys heard anything? Have you heard anything this week? Have you heard anything on the news this week? Hell no! They're on lockdown and they're still on lockdown. They're not happy. What the heck is going to happen? What is going to happen when they do let them out? Yeah. My life was taken away April 12th, 2011. Don't let this happen again. You need to be involved. You need to.
As we look to close tonight, please continue to help yourself to the treats in the back. We cannot stress the power of involvement. As Carla mentioned, as Sarah mentioned, this is community, this is getting involved. Elections have already started by absentee ballots. It is so important for your voice to be heard. It's not just what you learned here tonight, it's really sharing that word, it's being involved, it's showing up to those meetings. We know they're not always the most convenient of time, but making those efforts, being a part of your community, it's easy for even a millennial like myself to push it aside until it happens to you. So please make sure that you get involved, that you are aware, that you spread the word. If you're not able to do that, please, if you can, attend your meetings, look us on Facebook. We're pretty consistent about our meetings. Sign up petitions. We do have donations. We have donation buckets set up. And if you so are moved, we do have signage that you can purchase. Reach out to myself, Maddie, and get you in contact with any of the board members. We're happy to connect with you. Thank you so much for your time and attention. tonight, and let us know what we can do to help you next. Thank you so much again.